Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/NeighborsFromHell for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Comfortable Poet 8188. Karen targeting my 7-year-old. Our street used to be a suburban paradise. Think kickball games, kids on scooters, and parents bonding over yard projects. I've got 2 kids, 5 female and 7 male, and they loved it. Then there is Karen and her 6-year-old son. This kid doesn't play. He attacks, he hits, kicks, swears like he's a rap star, and bullies like it's a sport. I can't even exaggerate how bad the language is. Karen and I used to be friends, or so I thought, but she expects everyone to tolerate her kid's antics and kiss up to him, but is the first to reprimand someone else's kids. If anyone dares mention her son's behavior, she screams like a banshee. Her go-to line, "He's only 6!" Meanwhile, she'll correct your kid for breathing too loud. My son tried to be the bigger person and not hit back, until one day, after hours of being hit, kicked, and called vile names, he finally snapped and hit back. That's when Karen lost her mind. She screamed at my kid, then started telling the neighbor he needs therapy for his anger issues. Since then, she's told other parents my son is dangerous, he still sleeps with a nightlight, bullied kids who play with him, spreads lies about my son, using examples of things her kid actually did, picked a fight with another family because her kid told the dad to go fuck himself and she didn't like that he was reprimanded for it, screamed at me in front of the entire neighborhood like we were filming Real Housewives Suburbia Edition multiple times, accused my son of wielding a weapon and sniping at her family. It was a Nerf gun that wouldn't reach across the street, and her kid has a whole arsenal. Yelled, "I see you!" at kids playing with mine. Stormed into a neighbor's yard yelling, "Losers!" because her kid wasn't invited to play after she banned him from playing with them. Paid for elaborate playdates to lure kids away from mine. Walked into another neighbor's yard to confront my 7-year-old for telling his son to go home to his mommy. She's trying to socially isolate a 7-year-old who's done nothing wrong. Now, some kids are scared to play with my son because they're afraid of her. He's afraid to walk past her house, so I have to escort him or ask a neighbor to. I'm just trying to survive summer without turning this into Survivor Suburban Showdown. How do I protect my kids and my sanity without stooping to her level? Update. First thing I wanted to say is I'm amazed and overwhelmed in a good way by how many of you took the time to comment and give advice or share common experiences. I replied to as many as I could, and I promise I've read every comment. Thank you, truly. Second thing is that while this isn't resolved, I followed the advice many gave. I installed cameras, and last night, we had a neighborhood get-together. Bouncy house, water slide, fireworks, swimming pool. A neighbor who witnessed all this since the start and has also been bullied by Karen, organized it. Parents began to compare notes and noticed that without Karen and her child, there was zero misbehavior, 0 instances of kids hitting and foul language / name calling, 0 drama. There were about a dozen kids there and they had a blast. The parents relaxed and enjoyed themselves. Karen and family saw and packed up and left their house for the evening. The truth does have a way of showing itself. Best of all, my son was the happiest I've seen him in weeks, and now has plenty of adults who will back him if he's targeted again. I would argue that this is step 1. You've got your child's name cleared and your name cleared, and all the other adults in the neighborhood can see the fact that Karen and her son are the ones who are actually causing all of the problems. So at least the social isolation aspect is entirely handled. Now step 2 is using those cameras and using any evidence you can gather to get footage of Karen starting fights, causing problems, making life hell for you and your son. With enough footage and even potential testimonies, potentially written from your neighbors, could definitely go a long way in getting a restraining order if you see fit. If Karen continues to be a problematic instigator, then a restraining order might be your best bet. But if the block party bouncy castle event for some reason made Karen do a double take and reconsider her actions, then who knows? Maybe she'll no longer be a problem and realize that she is the one who is actually an issue here. But that's unlikely. So definitely just keep the cameras rolling, make sure that you keep yourself safe and your child safe, and Collect evidence in case you feel a restraining order is needed. Competitive Alps 871. Neighbors holding grudges. Am I to apologize? It's been almost 2 years ago since I had a fence installed between the properties on both sides of my house. So it doesn't enclose my property entirely, just both sides are a boundary type of fence on both sides, just installed right within the property line, per a survey done by a licensed surveyor 2 months prior. Done everything to code per ordinance and officially approved by the township. Basically, both sides of me, the neighbors, were basically encroaching, taking liberties. The one lady was scalping nearly half of my front yard when she would cut her grass. People might think she was doing me a favor, but I have professional grass cutters, and she scalps her grass, so it looked like crap. Plus, she would let her dogs and the dogs that she dog sits in my yard, off leash, doing their business, etc. To the point, I was afraid to let my own dog in his own yard. Neighbor on the other side would let himself, his teenage son, his family, his visitors, use my driveway, in spite of me asking them not to. The big point with them was one night I pull into my driveway, and their son, who was about 11 to 12 years old at the time, one night ran from behind their very large bush right next to my driveway and nearly ran into my vehicle. Luckily, I was able to stop in time. Spoke to both him and his mom, asked him to stay in his own yard, but he ignored it. They all ignored my request. And, oh yes, the same man on the other side of me also let his dog off leash frequently. I caught his dog on my Ring camera urinating on my bush more than once with the owner standing by. The owner not doing anything to stop the dog. No wonder that bush ended up dying. And yes, I did speak to the grass-cutting lady about encroaching, and she decided each week to go further and further into my yard. She's lived there about 3 years or so now. This might be her 4th year, I don't know. But the first year she moved in, she had a habit of burning garbage, and my elderly father was living with me with COPD, on oxygen with various health issues and heart issues. I told her about all of this when she was burning garbage one day, and she acted like I was talking to the lamppost. So, eventually, I had enough of her burning garbage, and I reported her. No surprise she has ignored me hardcore since. I'm sure she's thrilled about the fence, because she hated cutting grass since I put the fence up. Yes, it is a bit difficult cutting grass near a fence. Same with his neighbor on the other side. He lost the liberty of using my driveway with him and all his friends and family. So now, he and his family hardcore ignore me. They both are like I'm supposed to apologize to them. So yeah, I also added security cameras in case they decided to mess with my fence or continue to be bad neighbors, so to speak. Guess what? They don't like my cameras. Now they hardcore ignore me and act like I'm to apologize to them. So far I've been ignoring them, but it gets very awkward when we're all outside at the same time. And I'm not gonna constantly look out my window waiting for them to not be outside to do what I have to do. I have tried somewhat, trying to break the ice with both, but that was met with bare one-word answers from them. Was I wrong here? Should I apologize? I just don't see how, if I even apologize, if it would make a difference. On one hand, I feel like if they didn't change their behavior, the fence wouldn't have had to have gone up. They act as though I have money to throw away for a survey and a fence. Obviously, it was very well thought out, and because they didn't change their behaviors after I spoke with them, I really had no choice if I wanted to keep them, their dogs, their family, their visitors, out of my yard and off my driveway. Maybe I'm turning into the old person, get off my grace. And I realize a lot of people would think what they do/did is not a big issue. That's fine, you're entitled to how you feel. Too long didn't read, neighbors taking liberties and constantly encroaching. I ended up installing a fence. Now they hardcore ignore me, and make things very awkward when I have to be outside. They make me feel like I was the person being a jerk. Moving is not an option. Obviously they're not receptive to me talking to them. I guess I'm just venting. I just know that the neighbors on the other end have their own stories for things like, oh, did you know that this neighbor with fences up almost hit my kid in his driveway? Yeah, this scumbag neighbor, I mowed his lawn for him and then he put a fence up. What a weirdo. Meanwhile, it's, yeah, your kid just runs in front of my car and you keep mowing my grass to a point where it's literally dying. And in the end, if this is how they're going to act and react to you asking them if they could stop their behaviors and them continuing them, so you put up a fence, so they'll stop their behaviors? Are these really people you want to have a conversation with? Honestly, it sounds like silence might just be the best piece you got here. Super Saiyan. Neighbor brandished gun at my 2-year-old and I. I've lived in my neighborhood for 5 years. It's nice, quiet, and everyone keeps to themselves for the most part. I walk my dog, a Shiba Inu, around the neighborhood once a day minimum. My 2-year-old son likes to go on these walks as well. I am a responsible pet owner and pick up my dog's poop. Never had an issue with anyone, and there are plenty of others that do the same. Today, all 3 of us go on a morning walk, and my dog decides to take a poop in the grass 3 houses down from where we live. I unroll a bag to get ready to pick it up. All of a sudden, I hear the residents of this house, man and woman, banging on their front window angrily. I figured they're upset that my dog is pooping on their grass. I hold up the bag to show them that I have a bag to pick it up. They weren't happy with that, so the man comes out aggressively. He starts saying, "Why does my dog have to poop on his grass?" I reply, I'm going to pick it up, and I really can't choose where he decides to poop. He responds with, "You need to control your dog." I tell him, "I'm sure you can't control the birds, iguanas, and other wild animals from crapping on your grass." He then proceeds to go back inside. While I'm tying the bag, I can see the woman yelling at him through the window. The man comes back outside, and he goes to the front passenger side door of his car. I live in Florida, so I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen. He shuts his car door and holds a handgun, very awkwardly, at the end of the handle so I can clearly see it. My 2-year-old son is holding my hand when this happens. I was filled with rage, but I knew I had to get my son and dog to safety. I mentioned to him, "That's real tough of him to brandish a gun with a toddler present." He went back in his house, and I turned around and got them safely in my house. I called the police right away. About 9 officers show up, and with some of them positioning themselves in certain areas, and some came to get my side of the story. In the back of my mind, I know he's going to get off with a warning. They then head to his house, and they spend a long time over there. I can see him try to show them where my dog was pooping, and of course, he shows the spot way closer to his front door. My dog was maybe 4 feet onto his grass from the sidewalk. The cops come back to my house and said they gave him a warning, and there is no issue with my dog pooping on their grass as long as I was cleaning it. He said our stories were exactly the same. As far as brandishing his gun, the man is claiming he was transporting his gun from his car to the house. The cop said he knew that was BS because why would you choose the exact moment when a 2-year-old is around? But at the end of the day, that was his defense, and he didn't have his finger on the trigger or pointed in our direction. If there's any ideas on how to make this man miserable without interacting with him, that would be appreciated. I'm very petty, and am still in shock he did this in front of my son, and that's unforgivable. If this is the wrong subreddit, please let me know. Update. I am listening to the majority of everyone's advice not to engage. This morning, I noticed the trunk of my car had been keyed. I have a doorbell camera, but it doesn't have full sight of my car. I'm going to ask the neighbors across the street if they can see anything on their doorbell camera. It has a good sight of the front of my house, even though it might be a little distant. Update. July 14th, 2025. Did a quick Google search on his name, and he was arrested in 2023 for domestic battery on a pregnant woman. Also, this evening, I went to take my dog out front to pee, and I see him slowly driving past my house. What's interesting is that if he comes in the main entrance to the neighborhood, it brings him to the opposite end of the street where he lives. And that's the direction where he normally comes from. The safest thing for OP to do in this specific situation, get more cameras, stay the fuck away from this crazy lunatic. Definitely do not engage, get cameras, make a paper trail, stay away from him, and do everything you can to avoid him, record, and keep yourself safe. Find a new dog route. Do everything you can not to deal with him. Because this man is unhinged. Florida has the castle doctrine. There's a reason why he was showing the officers you were far closer to his house than you actually were. If he's wicked enough to do that, definitely stay away from him. Don't engage, don't get petty revenge, just keep your distance. JLMC Dawn 2. Just moved in our new home, neighbor vandalized car and already called the city on us. We just bought a house and knew the previous owner. We knew they had problems with the neighbor across the street, Gary, like having the city call and complain about weeds and so on. We dismissed it, thinking it was probably valid. We've met all the other neighbors, and they're also super nice and helpful, and agreed, Gary is crazy and a big pain in the ass. We spent 2 months renovating the house before moving in and had a waste management dumpster bag out front holding miscellaneous debris. We moved in, and less than a week after moving in, I got a visit from the city inspector citing us for blight. She was apologetic, explaining the single baseboard that was outside of the bag needed to be put inside it. I was so shook and confused about getting a citation. She just explained, I can't tell you who the neighbor is, but the previous owners would have this neighbor complain a lot. I've been to this house a lot. I'm so sorry. I talked to the other neighbors we know, and they vented about him saying it was ridiculous. All right, no problem. We can deal with this. Our niece is staying with us and had a friend stay the night. They parked across the street in front of Gary's house. When they went to leave the next morning, their front passenger tire was flat with the valve stem core missing. They stupidly drove to get air in it and got the core replaced. My niece called me to tell me what happened, and I mentioned it to my next door neighbor, Nicole. She immediately exclaimed, oh my God, that's Gary. I went over immediately and she told me this story. A few years ago, Gary's next door neighbor, renters, had their adult daughter living with them. The daughter parked in front of Gary's house one night. The next morning, Nicole was outside chatting with another neighbor when the daughter, distraught, says her tire is flat. They look and the valve stem core is missing. She's panicked because she's going to be late for work, so the other neighbors help her get the tire inflated and fixed. Nicole said that it was such an odd thing to happen because these parts don't just fall out. It has to be physically removed with a tool or gizmo. Fast forward to yesterday. I go to Nicole's house and talk to her and her husband. He had taken a picture of the car parked at Gary's thinking it was a car from VRBO down the street and was worried something would happen, not knowing it was my niece's friend. In the photo, you can see she's not parked illegally. She's perfectly legal on the street. We have no proof it was Gary, but obviously suspect it was him. My spouse and I are so mad, and I'm petty as hell. So my current plan is to file a police report to document it, have the police talk to Nicole and her husband, and set up the nicest night vision cameras money can buy, and I can afford, to cover all aspects of my yard, plus get some for Nicole's house. What else should we do? Edit, wow, this has turned into a largely wildly supportive and creative amalgamation of petty revenge and malicious compliance. Thank you everyone for your fabulous next step contributions and words of support. We will update when there is an update to update. Getting cameras is 100% the correct first step to take, but if you really want to get petty, the next thing you can do is get familiar with your county or city's bylaws and figure out any violations he might have to get the same city inspector to cause him some hell. Give Gary a taste of his own medicine, because chances are there's probably 1 or 2 things that you can really ruffle his feathers about. And if you're willing to risk it, park a vehicle in front of his house with dash cams or make sure you have hidden cameras on it and just see if he does it again and you can catch him on camera. If he does it, congratulations, you have evidence of him committing a crime. And if it's the same exact crime with the same exact kind of damage, I'm pretty sure the police would have enough evidence to tie him to the other tire stem valve removal as well. Most important part is, don't commit crimes despite Gary. Catch him in the act and enforce the same regulations that he likes to enforce onto others. Keep within the rule of law because you never know. That motherfucker might have his own security camera systems if he's this paranoid and this overprotective over the city ordinance. Doggy dart. Not cutting down my trees. A few years ago, I owned a house in a semi-rural area. I had 2 absolutely beautiful 30-plus-year-old mango trees. Every year, I bagged up hundreds of mangoes and handed them out to anyone who showed any interest in them, and gave them away for free. I got a new neighbor next door whose house was adjacent to my trees. The trees were about 10 meters from the fence, and the branches were all well within my property line. Well, he got solar panels installed on his roof. He then sent me a letter telling me He had hired a contractor to cut down my mango trees because they would die soon anyway. Spoiler, they didn't. And they were blocking his solar panels. He told me the date they would be arriving to cut the trees, and told me the invoice would be sent to me for payment. I sent him a very sternly worded letter back saying that the trees were not going to be cut down or trimmed in any way, that any contractor he hired would be denied entry, and that if he set foot on my property, I would be calling the police. He then retaliated by throwing rocks and blocks of wood at my dogs. He was such a lovely person. If you ever have a neighbor who's throwing things at your animals, definitely get a camera to catch it on video. That's just gross behavior. But also, that solar company really fucked up to the point where mango trees that were 10 meters away are blocking the solar panels. Either that or he's lying. Because normally, especially in modern times, solar companies will get a drone with an infrared camera on it, fly it above the house, and figure out what the hotspots are. Once they have an idea of where the hotspots are, that's where they install the solar panels. At least, that's how 4 companies I consulted with all did their business. That might just be something that's exclusive to Colorado, but it seemed like a pretty standard business practice. And if they just slapped solar panels on his roof without figuring out where the hotspots were, he should definitely consult with them about such a massive mistake instead of trying to cut down a neighbor's mango trees. Empty Land 9195. Strangers keep coming to my house because of my neighbor. My neighbors have a set of small cottages which they use for tourists to rent for a holiday. Our house is hidden behind a long, winding driveway and is detached from their house and the cottages. It's pretty clear to most people that it's a house. I mean, the cottages are right there. They're completely visible, plus the car park and numerous buildings. Instead, we have strangers coming up our driveway, parking in our drive, and knocking on our door at all hours of the day. Sometimes it's at midnight, sometimes 6 a.m. It's not every day, but it's often enough and has been going on for the almost 20 years we've been living here, that I'm just so annoyed by it, I want to scream. And the people who come and knock at our door are, of course, the most stupid type of people. The cottages are visible from our house, and I'll point and explain to just go up the other driveway. It's literally only our drive or the driveway to the cottages. It's not hard. Yet, they still act confused. And often my neighbors are out, so these strangers come back and ask us what to do. Why would I know? Leave me alone. This is private property. It's my home. We've even had people go into our back garden and walk into our living room. Like, what? We even have a sign at the end of our driveway that says private property. Apparently, some people just don't care. And there are signs on our neighbor's driveway that explain where the cottages are. Why are some people so stupid? Comment from Q from P. Tell your neighbor that every time their guests trespass on your property, you'll be calling the cops. This will piss off the confused guests and impact the neighbor's business. So, neighbor needs to figure out how to better communicate with their guests. Opie responds, I've been considering it. I'm weirdly friendly with my neighbors though. They gave me a job working for them in the pandemic when I got laid off and essentially just gave me money for doing almost nothing. They're good people. It's just some of their customers are really, really stupid. Q from P further responds, this happened to my mom. The holiday business next door to hers is her nephew's, so yeah, friendly family and all of that. But she had to get kind of stern for nephew to get the message. She's in her 70s, hard of hearing, and some strangers banged into her house with suitcases. Not okay. My first thought, just based upon this comment from OP, is I wonder if the neighbor may have, from the time that he was working for him, left their contact information or directions on how to get into contact with them in case of emergencies, and that might just still be there, leaving OP to weirdly be on the hook for something that happened, potentially almost 3 years ago. Just a potential explanation, I suppose, that kind of makes sense in my head with that additional context, but honestly, while the private property signs are nice and all, you might need to be more explicit and put up more detailed signs, unfortunately, if this is becoming a constant problem. It also probably wouldn't hurt to have a further conversation with the neighbor about this behavior, because I doubt they would want this to be occurring or they're doing this on purpose. Chances are, if you actually have a good relationship with them, they'll work with you on this and actually see to find a solution that'll benefit both of you and not leave you in the position where you have strangers barging into your living room. Vega Passarelli. Neighbor keeps accidentally blowing his leaves into my yard, so I return the favor. I live in a pretty leafy neighborhood, so yeah, yard work is just part of life. My neighbor, though, has this monster of a leaf blower, like the kind landscapers use, and for some reason, he insists on blowing all of his leaves straight into my yard. Every time, no shame about it either. We don't even share a fence. He just walks right up to the edge of his property and lets it rip like it's totally normal. I asked him, nicely, to stop, and he just said, "Well, the wind carries them that way anyway." My guy, you are the wind. So last week I waited until he finished, and I calmly raked up every single leaf and dumped them back in his driveway. Didn't say a word. Just made eye contact the whole time like it was the most casual thing in the world. He hasn't touched the leaf blower since. It's been 4 blissfully quiet days. I think I broke his spirit a little. Petty, maybe, but honestly, I'm sleeping better than I have in weeks. Clippings to the street, leaves to the bin. That's kind of what my dad always taught is if you have yard clippings, you can just kind of blow those into the street and things will just kind of take care of themselves no matter what. But when you're dealing with leaves, rake them up and put them in the bin. Just take care of them, because they're just going to end up on someone else's property, and who knows, it might end up back on your property. So you may as well just take care of them while you can, so that way they're no one else's problem. It's just incredibly goofy to be this inconsiderate and blow it on your neighbor's yard. Especially because, again, if they catch you doing it, you're just gonna cause problems, like having a bunch of leaves in your driveway that mysteriously showed up there. I don't know how they got there. I didn't see anything. But damn, dude, that sucks that a pile of leaves mysteriously appeared in your driveway. Dancing Elephant 0903. I have a creepy/nosy neighbor that has made enjoying the backyard impossible. He shouts incorrect weather reports from his porch and inside. If it's hot outside, he shouts how it's going to snow today. In the winter, he shouts inside about how it's going to be a hot one today, and can be heard through the walls. We had to switch bedrooms because he starts at 7 a.m. and won't stop. He's asked me when is he going to see me in shorts. Whenever the homeowners next door go out back, he interrogates them about where they park. They park in their own driveway. It makes inappropriate comments to the daughter. They don't use their backyard either because of him. The landlord doesn't do anything, even though she's aware of his bad behavior. It's frustrating because the back is private compared to the front, but can't be used. He watches me come and go in my car and just watches. He throws half-eaten food off his porch and then complains about the raccoons. Almost 4 years of dealing with this man. Any advice on how to get even without it being obvious? Either this guy is going through something and needs a welfare check or some kind of adult protective services intervention, or he just thinks he's an absolute jokester and class clown and doesn't realize he's actually just causing a disruption or problems. Like many of the comments suggest, I'd probably start with calling adult protective services if you're in the US, or any kind of equivalent that you might have if you're outside of the US, because this behavior is actually concerning. Annoying, certainly, but it makes me worry there might be some underlying issues going on here that's not obvious that's causing this kind of behavior. I'd be curious for additional input in the comments on this one. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.